Well, welcome to another episode of the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Today, I'm joined with both Sophie Dimolo and our guest today, Nikki Chapple. Nikki works at Cloudway. Cloudway as a principal cloud architect. So we're really pleased to have her today. Sophie, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. And it's really nice to be a co-host again. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sophie Dimolo. I'm the Microsoft Cloud Consultant at the Pure Technology Group. Nikki, do you want to give a bit of an introduction about yourself and your job role?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nikki Chapple. I'm based near London, and I've just recently joined. I'm only on week 2. I've just joined Cloudway as a principal cloud architect, focusing on governance and compliance. So Cloudway are a small consultancy organisation really focused on Microsoft 365. I'm the 10th person that joins the company, and all of the other 9s are MVPs, so something I aspire to. So it's a real kind of, I suppose, privilege to be joining, such esteemed people in the organisation. But
yeah, I think I was going to ask a couple of questions about Cloudway because and what you first in kind of, because they sound like a really good organisation. To be fair, like so Ben and others that are there have gone on to become MVPs there. So it sounds like a really good progressive company to be able to not only work within Microsoft 365, but also within the community.
Yeah. So, it's really good to be working with other people that are so passionate about Microsoft 365. I think that's the difference from where I've come from. I came from a large company where they did lots of different things, and there wasn't many people like myself that focused on what I was doing. So now actually joining a team of people that are all specialised and also passionate about Microsoft 365 delivering excellence to the customer, but also that community spirit as well. We're given that time to kind of evolve in ourselves, learn ourselves, and then really importantly, share what we know with the wider community.
So you've been working in IT now for 35 years. Do you want to kind of, sorry to put the number on the podcast, but you have said it, so it's out there.
Yeah, it is. So, no, I just wanted to say that, gosh, it seems a long time. So, yeah, really, I started in IT about probably 19 years old. It was just happened to be one of the fathers of one of my friends happened to work for BT, and there was this big computer centre near where I live, so it was really close. Said, there's some jobs going for people in computer operations. And I thought, sounds a bit interesting, because I was always one of these girls that was a tomboy. I always wanted to do tech stuff and logical stuff and everything. I thought, it sounds interesting. Let's see where it goes. So that's where I started. And wow, I mean, computer operations, this mainframe computers. So it involved punching cards, so like names and addresses, or if you wanted to load, they were like big open reel tapes. You had to like punch cards to actually load them up in this hopper. Massive, great big, almost like football pitch size rooms of mainframe computers. No windows at any of that time. It was kind of your dumb monitors with the green, the screens with the green tape. Or imagine, I think it was almost like the football. When you kind of I suppose when I was growing up, the football scores used to come in. It was like a ticker tape, tick, 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 tick. It was almost like that on the screen. So, I mean, computing has come such a long way. And, it's
I'm going to pretend I know what you're talking about, but I don't.
It's just, if you ever get the chance to go, if you're going to Bletchley Park, because there's a conference up there, 23rd of February, is amazing computer exhibition.
I've seen it, yeah.
So some of those big box computers, not the Colossus stuff, I'm not old enough for that type of thing, but a lot of the other there were IBM, Amdell, ICL type of computers that I started working on first.
So you're talking at that event, aren't you?
I'm not talking, no, not that one.
Isn't that event an in-person event towards February that I'm thinking about, or...?
No, I'm not talking at any in-person events, so I'm going to go to it. So
you're going to it. I must have seen that you said that you're going to it or something.
Yeah.
I can relate to that so much, Nikki. Not obviously your first job at all, but in regard to being a tomboy and just thinking logically, like before this podcast, me and Nikki were talking about just decorations and being creative and stuff. And me personally, I don't have that side of me, but in terms of the logic and always being interested in tech and things like that, that's something that is one of my characteristics as well. Do you think, obviously seeing the transition of tech you know, throughout the years. How has that been for you? And do you feel like you've adapted? Well, obviously you've adapted really well to it, but how have you adapted to the changes?
Well, I think that's one of the things that I like. I don't like that stability. So, you know, when we talk about, for most people, change can be uncomfortable. I've worked in environments where somebody's moving desks and it's like their whole world's collapsing around them because they've been asked to sit somewhere else. Well, I find it exciting. So for me, I suppose as a child, I like things like jigsaw puzzles, and I used to do them upside down because they were a bit boring having the picture side up and things. So for me, it's just like this ongoing learning experience. I thrive on that. So that's where kind of I find that, you know, working in IT is fantastic because it's just changing all the time. There's always something to learn. I wouldn't want to be in a job where you kind of did some sort of training and then that was like stable for a particular amount of years. So I've always sought to kind of say, well, I've learned that bit. Well, what else can I do? What else can be of value? And just kind of moved around, really. And my whole career hasn't been in IT. You know, I've moved in and out of IT as I've gone on. And I think that really helps, actually, having that broad experience.
Yeah, I think as well within Microsoft, because I specialise within Microsoft as well. And I think you've got to enjoy challenge, and you've got to enjoy change, because it is forever changing. You need to keep up with it, so you've got to enjoy learning as well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, because I'm on the consultancy side, I'm working with lots of different clients. That's different industries, different sizes. They've got different business drivers. So it's that adapting what those kind of business drivers and business needs are, and then applying them into how can the Microsoft 365 product suite, you know, support the customer. So I feel that I'm really that translator role, taking the business, why do we want to get there, what do we want, and then using Microsoft 365 to deliver that. How are we going to get there?
So over those years, how do you feel the attitude to women working in IT has changed, if it has changed at all? I'm guessing it has.
Well, I think it has. I still find that, particularly in what I'm doing, because it's a lot of kind of compliance, governance, security type stuff, when I'm working with most clients, I'm almost always the only woman there. So that's, I think, still quite disappointing. You tend to find if like the data protection officer type of role, then you tend to get some more women in, but mainly kind of it seems to be, it's still very male dominated. I think it's quite hard when you're young. I was very, very shy as a child. I find it very hard to make friends. You know, I was really much more focused on, I don't know, other things rather than people. So going into IT, it didn't particularly worry me that I didn't have too many friends, because that I don't get driven by, you know, kind of that social thing. I get driven by kind of learning and that internal motivators. So for work side, it was fine, but it's the kind of, I think, that social side. And I think still now you can have that, it's kind of that lads banter. I think particularly when you're younger, you don't necessarily resonate it. I mean, I'm not particularly into football, and most blokes' conversations turn around to football and or various other things. So that's where you kind of feel out of it. In the actual work situation, it can be okay. But I have worked with women previously that have left the IT industry because they felt that it was uncomfortable. I think the other thing that I found, not quite so much now because the world has changed. When I first started, you still had, you know, we didn't have, you know, Windows and the full-blown computers where you could do everything yourself. There were still those kind of secretariat type roles. So traditionally, they were the women and the people in IT were the men. So I'd often go and be running, you know, a meeting. There'd be external people there, and they just automatically assumed I was there to take the notes. I was there to go and get the coffee. And you have to turn around and say, no, I'm actually the project manager of this. I might look young, I might be a woman, but, you know, you're kind of on that back foot all the time. So I think I felt when I was younger, you had to be twice as good as a man to be recognised for what you, I suppose, what you are really. I said over the years, you kind of, I suppose, maturity helps and that sort of thing. I get much more confident in myself and my skills, and I know, you know, I've got that to back me up. But I think at the beginning of the career, it was much harder, and I think that's why it's really important that women support other women, you know, and bring that sort of mentoring, that supporting culture to encourage people to say, business skills are really important in the IT world. You don't have to, I've done a computer science degree. You don't have to have been, a technical consultant and work your way up. You can move in and have really good, valuable skills and bring them into IT as well.
And do you think, or sort of more the question, when did you see that change that, someone like me going into an IT consultancy role, we wouldn't have this, that stigma around men and female?
I really think it's probably only in about the last 10 years or so that sort of things change. So I think the world has become a lot more open. So it wasn't just the stigma in women, it was the stigma case of things like once you get to 50, you've had it as a career. Well, I'm over 50 now, and I think I've only just begun to know what I really want in my life, and I'm going to go for it. And that's taken me until the age of 50, or, to get to know where I am. I'm not past it. So, I think people's attitudes are beginning to change about all different sort of stigmas and prejudices that people have got, and now work much more on, what's people's attitudes like, what's their competencies, what's their skills and knowledge. Because it's not even about has somebody been to university and got a load of qualifications. It's about, is that person able to do that role? Have they got the skills and competencies?
Yeah, it's really nice to hear that, especially as like someone younger, because there's so much pressure. There's just so much pressure on young people, and I guess for men, female, whoever. But it's the pressure to get it right and the pressure to have to be in a role and be successful and whatever. So the fact that you're just figuring it out, that's I think like a breath of fresh air, to be honest.
I think passion has got a lot to do with it. I remember, in a role earlier on, I was working on a project, and we wanted people in the organisation to be seconded on this large CRM transformation project. And somebody from the customer service centre come up to me and she said, I'm really interested in sort of changing my career. I haven't got any skills in IT. Is this something I can do? And I thought, well, just because somebody has come to me and says they're willing, they want to learn, you think, yeah, let's give them a chance. And they worked on the project for 2 years, came out, became a test analyst, and then has become a business analyst, and they're doing fantastically well in the career. So I think it's opening those doors, if you can, for anybody else, just to kind of get their foot in the door, give them that additional foot up, sort of, really. And I think that's where sort of women can help other women. Yeah,
I think that's really good, and it's something that definitely the Microsoft Spotlight podcast have such a encouragement of, is the mentoring factor. I know, John, you think we're always looking for mentors and just people that are going to help people within that next step, especially within MVP. I know myself and John are the same as yourselves, like we'd really love to be an MVP one day. So within Cloudway, I know you said you everyone else is an MVP. Is this something that they is it like a milestone for the company, or is everyone who works there eventually wanting to be an MVP? How does it work?
Yeah, so I think they really encourage and support that community aspect. So one of the interesting things about Cloudway is that we have something called No Meeting Fridays. So the idea is that we don't have any client work or meetings on Friday. Fridays is there for your personal well-being. So it's there for you to kind of reflect on your week, plan for your future week, and also for you to do that personal development. So whether it's listening to a podcast while doing some cooking or going for a walk outside, whether it's creating information for a blog post or preparing for meetings, etc. So it gives you that sort of nice balance. And then obviously, because you've got that sort of time to support and work on the community, that's kind of one of those aspects that's really looked for in that sort of becoming an MVP. So it wasn't a requirement to be an MVP to join the company, but they want people to aspire to be at that level.
I love the Friday no meetings as well. I think a lot of companies would benefit from that.
Yeah, and I think, what happens if you don't have that time to reflect, we're in this world now where we're back-to-back meetings, people don't necessarily change our meetings to 50-minute meetings. You're going from one one project or activity to another, and your brain just can't cope. And then at some point you need to reflect and document what you're doing and everything. And it can be quite stressful at that time. So be able to have that time, to reflect and to plan and organise and learn is, I think, it's really a healthy thing to do, just to kind of get that balance right.
Yeah, business is watching, take note. Yes, for sure. So just sort of moving on then, what would you say your best career highlights are so far?
I suppose I had the opportunity to go and work abroad on a contract, so on a secondment for 2 years. So that's while I was at BT. So that was really interesting. And what made that kind of even special is I was a single parent at the time. Right. And I was only the second woman single parent that had worked abroad on a secondment. Now, that was kind of quite controversial at the time. The number of people that came to me and said, well, you're going to work abroad and you're going to leave your child. My daughter was 2 at the time behind. And I said, well, I'm going to have to start off with because I need to get myself settled. And but nobody would give a second thought if a man was on a secondment for a project, what his marital status was or whether they had children or not. So that was kind of quite, I think, breaking down sort of like, barriers a bit. So that was really interesting to get the opportunity just to go and work in a country. I'd never even been to Amsterdam before when I went out there. So I thought that was quite nice. I'm trying to think other things. So I suppose about just over a year ago, I thought, right, I'm really going to get serious into the community stuff. I really want to become an MVP. So I launched my own blog website, so nikkichapple.com. So that was quite a journey as well, because I'm not experienced in creating websites or anything like that. So I spent quite a bit of time, trying to make it look nice, because I think that's part of it. If it needs to look professional and workable and work out what you're going to cover. So I've been working on that. So that's kind of really pushing me outside of my comfort zone, trying to do that sort of creative writing where probably that doesn't come natural to me. I can do the technical, factual type stuff, but being a little bit more creative and doing the story. So, that's been pushing me. And I think, beginning to do speaking at events, I really enjoy doing that, sharing my experience. So, that's good. And I think the very last thing that I've been that's just come out is the Microsoft maturity model for governance, risk and compliance. So that's literally just come out in January. So there's been a number of these maturity models worked on in the Microsoft community. So so I've just been leading on that, and it's how we can actually develop that and kind of use that as sort of tools to help organisations learn how to kind of take a kind of a crawl, walk, run approach to increasing their compliance maturity. So.
Amazing. I don't see many women within architecture, and I think myself, Andrew and John, we were actually having this conversation previously, because I used to be in IT recruitment and I used to focus on infrastructure. Part of that was infrastructure architecture, and I never saw any women within the role at all. Do you still find this is the case?
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. So you'll get women in like testing roles, and I find them, as business analysts role. But when it actually becomes to much more people that are coming out of those sort of architecture type, infrastructure type roles, that does tend to be very, I suppose, male dominated environment. I don't know why.
No. No, I'm not 100% sure.
Even consultancy, right? This, say, 99% male orientated. Me and Andrew have said many times in the podcast in the past. I haven't ever interviewed a female for a role within my team, and that's because the CV hasn't come over, not because I've gone I haven't had a CV over from a female at all. So like it's hard when I don't know, you're not getting presented with even options.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's various different statistics. So there's only about 19% of the kind of tech community in the UK that are women. So, and I haven't seen any breakdown to say where they are on their careers. So, I don't know what the kind of the answer is. I think people are making choices much earlier in the career. So when you look at the kind of the STEM subjects, the science, technology, the engineering and mathematics, when you're looking at the technology and the engineering, the number of women taking those options is still relatively low. But if you look at some of the science subjects, you kind of, or the mathematical subjects, you get much more of a equality. So, I think it comes down to role models with children. I think I was lucky. My father was an engineer. I was brought up in the garage as a tomboy. I was always in there with the woodwork and the metalwork and underneath cars and things like that. Not interested in Barbie dolls and that. So I think it is having those role models. Computer science is a subject in schools, but again, not that many girls are kind of choosing to take those subjects.
No, I don't know what the percentage is, but I literally think it's like there might be one girl in that class or in that subject or whatever. So yeah, it's something that I've been trying to do and just trying to raise awareness in the best way for the younger generation. But it's hard to do.
Yeah, and then I think for particularly younger people, you want to have this sense of community. So if you're going into classes or subjects where they're majority of boys, then that can feel quite uncomfortable. So that can be also a barrier because you haven't got that sort of equality. But I think all we can do is kind of just keep just promoting and encouraging as many people as possible, and make sure people are aware that it doesn't have to be a career that you start off in IT and work your way up. There's lots of transferable skills out there, because in my mind, technology is just there to solve a problem. It's the kind of how we're going to do it. The really important questions are, why does an organization want to change? Where does it want to get there? What are the rules? And defining that, well, a lot of those are kind of transferable business skills, even before you get to, now what the technical controls, I need to run a PowerShell script or something out there. So it's just proactively trying to recruit women, I suppose.
So do you think kind of women like you that are really kind of jumping into the community work and stuff like that, how much of a difference do you think people like you can make?
Well, hopefully I can make a little bit of difference. Obviously, I haven't got a particularly wide community of people looking at that, but I think it's every little thing we can do.
I think you've probably got more than what you realise. Like, okay. I think kind of the stuff that you've done. I think even more recently, like you're popping up on my LinkedIn and stuff quite frequently. You're doing lots of talks. You was at Paris Chicago. The week before, not at Chicago, but you was doing that.
Yeah. If only I was at Chicago, yeah.
Would have been nice, but you was there. So like little stuff like that. I mean, I wasn't following you to know that, if you get what I mean. Like I wasn't online stalking you, but like that, it popped up in my newsfeed, and so it shows you are kind of you are being like really active at the moment, and you have got a network. So you definitely
inspire me, Nikki, 100%.
Okay, thank you.
You're very relatable as well, so it's nice to speak to you.
Thank you. I suppose what I was trying to come across that in my last point was really that I promote the community that I have within LinkedIn, and a lot of us are all in the same world. So we're all in that Microsoft 365 world. So we all want to learn with each other. But that's a big change from then saying, you've got this community of Microsoft 365 people to how do we get to the younger generation to bring them in, because they're not going to be looking at my web pages or my LinkedIn profile. They're going to be on TikTok or something else. So it's trying to make things relatable. So and I don't know, I think there's so many different groups and organizations that are trying to tackle this problem.
Yeah, I think kind of stuff like you said, like TikTok is a really good way to engage. I think Kat Green has done a TikTok channel recently, and just doing hints and tips and stuff like that, I think is really good as well. So I've
started it.
And different ways to do it as well. I think kind of when everyone including us are doing like user groups and stuff like that, and blog pages and even it's not as many podcasts, I guess, but there are a lot of podcasts out there. So like even like showing different ways of showing your love and passion for what you do is really good. Something I thought about for a while was kind of streaming on Twitch and stuff, but like I just don't have the ideas to kind of go ahead and do that, to be fair.
What is Twitch?
It's a gaming streaming website, so it's mostly for gamers and stuff, but we have like previous guests. Layla Kozit does a coding channel on there where she goes through and she codes things in person. She has people and she live streams it and stuff, so it's really cool. But yeah, there's loads of different things that you can do out there, and I think kind of like, yeah, as you said, like TikTok and kind of getting to the younger audience is really important as well. And I think showing stuff like you don't need to go to university and all this stuff, and don't need higher education as such to kind of get to a good job. Like I think that's for me personally. I didn't go to university or anything like that, so like there's ways to kind of learn, I think, outside of university, especially in tech. And I'm not saying university is a bad thing to do at all, but like there are different channels, so like and people learn differently.
Yeah.
Sorry, bit of a rant.
Yeah. Don't go to university, kids. That's the message I want to portray, is it? But no, I get where you're coming from. So Nikki, for me as well, and for everyone listening, describe your usual working day as an architect and your job and what you do.
I suppose I don't really have a standard day, and that's the kind of the thing that I really like, that you could be working on all sorts of opportunities. I think now also moving to Cloudway, which is a much smaller organization, you've got multiple hats on, so we're encouraged to build those external relationships to bring business into the organization. So you've got that type of element of that kind of relationship building, and then it's a case of working then with clients or potential clients to define what their needs are. So, scoping out those pre-sale type of activities. What do you want to do? Then it may be into some strategic consultancy where somebody might want to be moving to the Microsoft 365 cloud, but are very low on that maturity. So they need that kind of visionary approach of how we're going to get there, what type of approach it is, what's our priority, through to actually supporting clients with some of the implementation of their activities as well. Other things I've kind of done in the past, I've done things like, you might be doing some like technical training, kind of upskill on particular things, or running demos, proof of concepts. So it's all sorts of different things really, and it could be on all sorts of different topics as well. So you never quite know until you meet the client. So say I specialize in governance and compliance really. So really making sure that we maximize the best use of Microsoft 365. It's balancing that need of the people from security wanting to lock it all down against the productivity of the business. It's finding that happy medium where that governance lie, having some sort of rules and structure, and importantly, making sure that the business know what they're doing. I think too often IT think, hey, this is easy. Well, they're living and breathing, the technology every day. They throw it over the fence, and then, Microsoft Teams or something like that is just yet another tool. And people are busy and they want to know, how the technology can solve problems. And I think that's where I come in, is how can tech solve those problems? We want to remove blockers. We want to make things more efficient, more effective. We want to reduce risk. So where organisations have got some particular compliance needs, how can we make sure we're minimising that risks while, really encouraging productivity?
So how did you get down the governance and compliance route itself then? Was there kind of any type of background in actually enjoying that side of things, or was it kind of like you just enjoy the Microsoft 365 products and that's where you fed into?
I suppose it's a bit of both really. I've always enjoyed technology, and in my one of my previous roles I was kind of doing leading business transformations. So it could be all sort of things. So I first started getting into it, I suppose, when I was working on opening up the organisation into India and China. So that was the first grasp of how different all the rules and regulations are in those organisations. That just because we worked in one particular way in the UK, you couldn't necessarily work in the same way when you expanded abroad and were kind of outsourcing some of those activities. And then the PCI DSS regulations came in. That's all about, handling and managing credit cards, and they're very, very prescriptive regulations, and there was, risks of significant fines, and you've got all of that due diligence to make sure the credit card data is not exposed.
I'm taking this as you actually really enjoy compliance.
Yeah, I don't know why nobody else likes compliance, but I suppose somebody does.
With me, I really like the Microsoft 365 tooling. So I like working on unified labeling, DLP, kind of all of that stuff there. And I really like working on that side of it. But my actual love for compliance itself is a bit a bit far from the mark, I think. I enjoy the products that kind of go behind it, but and and
I think that's one of the things is compliance is one of these kind of necessary evils, I think some people have to say, things that have to do, and there can be a lot of time filling in bits of paper and understanding it all. And I think where the Microsoft product set really helps is that there are tools in there to try and make that journey easier. And particularly with the maturity model that I'm working on as well, it's a case of it's how can we streamline this and look at the kind of the commonalities between some of those things, and how can we make that journey just that little bit less painful.
Yeah, I've been looking for someone to talk to about some compliance stuff, so I'm going to hit you up after this. Thank you very much.
That's okay.
What was it that interested you about Cloudway then? Because I know you came from a large organisation to a startup, so to speak. So what was that side of it that interested you?
Actually, it was a post on LinkedIn by a recruiter, and I just happened to see it, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I suppose where I was before my last organisation, it did end up being a large organisation, but when I started, it was much smaller, and it merged into NTT. So there wasn't like a big community of people that I could kind of brainstorm off and share ideas with. It was kind of quite limited. So when I saw this opportunity coming up, and I thought, there's some like really great people working there, that would be something be really good. I'll be able to share ideas, learn from each other. I like the ethos of where, you can encourage you to kind of do your community activities and share information, because I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of larger companies can afford to pay for the consultancy and resources, yet there's so many smaller organisations that haven't necessarily even got their own, full-time IT teams and everything. It is how can we get some of that best practice throughout that whole community side of things. So, I thought, well, why not? I wasn't looking for a job at the time. It was just a post, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And it just happened really quickly.
So your first couple of weeks have been good then? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's really good. It's really, really fun.
And they're not based in the UK either, are they? They're Scandinavia, aren't they?
Yeah, so the company's based in Norway. So there's actually, it's a virtual office. There are no physical office spaces. So it's people in a number of different European countries. So it makes it, that's quite an interesting thing as well. So I quite enjoy the ability to be based at home and be able to have that opportunity to focus and concentrate. I always found it really difficult when I was in an office and you've got noise around you to be able to focus or concentrate on things.
Noise, and I work out that if I go into the office now, I don't really go there for work. I go there for socialising now and just speaking to people and catching up with people that you don't really get to do too much on over Teams and stuff. I mean, you can over Teams, but it's different. You can't go for a beer.
I do miss at the moment the client engagements. I do think that's useful to actually sometimes be on site particularly when you're building those relationships and you need to speak to lots of different people. It can be hard running a whole day workshop over Teams. How to keep somebody's interest all day is quite hard, because you can't really gauge people's feelings and views necessarily, particularly when people don't put their cameras on. That's something that really frustrates me. You know, I'm presenting to a load of circles with initials in it, and it's just very surreal, I think.
Sorry, Nikki, soon enough you'll be talking to people's avatars.
Oh no, I don't like that at all, I'm afraid. The legless people.
Some legless objects you'll be talking to soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that either, to be fair. If I'm going to show an avatar that's mimicking my facial expressions and stuff like that, I might as well just be on camera.
Yeah, I think being on camera is much. Obviously, Teams has saved us a lot of time, and like you said, we are now in back-to-back meetings and whatnot. And if you were going on site, you know, it'd be a few hours out of your day, wouldn't it? But yeah, it's definitely more personable on camera rather than I always have my camera on anyway. So yeah, it's not the best thing just talking to either an initial or just like a face of a photo. Yeah. Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, I mean, something I've found that you've needed to do in the last 2 years is just always be the first person there. So if you go into a meeting, there's all like, if you turn on your camera, you start to notice one or two start to come on as well. So yeah, I found that better. As I work in consultancy as well, Nikki. So like, yeah, you need to have a face, I think, especially as a consultant. So I think like in that way, I think you're a bit more trustworthy if people can see your face. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if they see my face, I think I'm trustworthy, but still.
Oh, yeah.
So what's your usual? I know you're quite new there. You're on the onboarding process at Cloudway, but what's kind of like the usual day for you really at the moment? Is it just still? It's still onboarding.
I suppose it's onboarding, but it's also I've been brought in as kind of one of the three principal cloud architects there to really expand the focus of what they do into governance and compliance. So at the moment, I'm kind of building out what that looks like. So as well as kind of running the kind of Microsoft Cloud Accelerator types of activities, what other value and workshops and assessments, what's that process going to look like?
Amazing. So you're building your own team now, I guess. Or
I don't know.
All right.
I'm not necessarily a team. I'm not a sort of person that's always been one of these people that I want to be a manager and lead a team, because I've seen that so many times. Just because somebody is good at what they do doesn't make them a good manager. And I've always wanted to be that specialist and that kind of consultancy role, adding value. You know, I don't see myself as being a person, and that is a career. A manager is somebody that is good of managing and getting the best out of the people and removing those blockers. So yeah, it's not something I aspire to have necessarily a big team of people working for me.
What did you actually want to be when you were younger? Or
I don't know. I've never really had anything. All I know was, I suppose I didn't want to be a girl. That's what I didn't like to be. I didn't like to be told, you know, that you were supposed to play with Barbie dolls and wear pink dresses. And, you know, I remember at school I did a paper round, and then there was this paper round. It must have been the newsagent, some football league and competition. And if you got to the final, you play at Wembley. So I said, I'm going to play. And they said, no, you can't play. And I said, why not? And they said, oh, there's only kind of one set of changing rooms, so it's not allowed. So, and after that, I made that kind of my mantra is that I'm not going to take no for an answer. Okay. So, you know, and challenge those things. So just silly things like getting my first bank account and a checkbook. They wanted to know whether I was a Mrs., a Ms., a Mrs., or whatever. Yeah. And I thought, that's none of your business. I don't want to do that. So challenging the bank to try and say, I don't want to have that title associated with me. So yeah, I've never really known. It's only recently, I said, until I'm about 50, that I've decided actually I feel really comfortable in where I am now. I feel settled in what I'm doing. I've kind of get to that, I suppose it's that Maslow hierarchy of understanding. You know, you're starting off you know, at the beginning of your career, and it's that self-actualization. You know, it's that kind of I'm getting pleasure out of what I'm doing. It doesn't feel like it's work.
So you said about kind of like being a manager, kind of maybe not for you, different type of career and stuff like that. And I know you just started at Cloudway now, but what would be the perfect type of role for you? What if in the future, if you could have like the role for you now in the future, what kind of would that be for you?
I think I probably have got to where I'm happy with, actually, that being seen as, well, hopefully being seen as an expert in the field, and being there to help and support organisations through their journey. It is all about that, removing blockers, and a lot of it is also about, I think, that change management. You see a lot of change management on the end users. We've got to train them because there's a new tech. There's a lot of change management that still needs to happen in the IT world. They're coming from that on-premise world. They don't understand that the SaaS world is completely different, and the way that you manage and control and govern it is completely different. So it's there's a lot of work to be done there. So I think while there's still things in that area, I'm happy to stay here.
It's an amazing place to be at, definitely. One last question then. So who inspires you within the tech community?
Who inspires me? I think that's really difficult to have one particular person. What I really enjoy is the women in teams community. I think that's really, really powerful, because I find that that's a group of women where I think sometimes women feel a little bit more of that imposter syndrome than men do. Sometimes we feel that, are we good enough to be where we want to do? Are we good enough to go and want to speak? Or is the quality of our stuff good enough? So it's very good to be able to, I think, speak to that group of women that can help and support, really. So, yeah, I couldn't pick one particular person. So I think it's all of those other women in technology that make it, I think, such a really friendly place to work in, and very supportive place.
Yeah.
Nice one. If anyone hasn't kind of realised, Nikki's, if you're watching a video, Nikki's changed the background and stuff. She's having a bit of troubles with the internet, so I think we might just wrap up here. It's been an amazing episode so far, Nikki, and thanks for joining us today, Sophie.
No worries.
Great to have you both here. Just remember, check out our sponsors, BitTitan, and we'll see you later from there.
Okay, I'm really sorry about the internet dropping out. It's always one of these things, isn't it? There's always something that goes wrong with technology.
Oh, don't worry.
But it could happen at worst times, so don't worry about that.
It was absolutely amazing talking to you, Nikki. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you ever so much for having me today.
All right, thank you.
Take care,
then.
goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about BitTitan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let MigrationWiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose MigrationWiz.